ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our town council meeting this evening, August 8th, 2023. Thank you for attending. Another beautiful day in Blowing Rock. I think fall is here. But thanks for coming. Thanks for taking the time out of your important day. And so that being said, we're going to move on. Roll call. Albert.
Present.
David Harwood.
Here.
Melissa Pickett.
Here.
Doug Matheson.
Here.
Pete Green.
Here.
Okay, all are in attendance. If you would, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, approval of minutes. There were some revisions made, council, that I think Hillary made note. There were, I think, what, typographical or minor changes. So if you all are all in agreement, could I have a motion to approve the minutes from July 11th, 2023, regular and closed sessions?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
And all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, unanimous. All right, regular agenda adoption. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, how do we vote? Albert? David?
Aye.
Melissa?
Aye.
Doug?
Aye.
And Pete?
Aye.
Okay, regular agenda is adopted. Under the consent agenda, we've got a budget amendment 2023-12, special event, Porsche event, street closure, mayoral proclamation to end overdose in Watauga County. Of course, you all had your group photo a little while ago. Thank you for coming in early. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Albert? David?
Aye.
Melissa?
Aye.
Doug?
Aye.
And Pete?
Aye.
Okay, consent agenda is adopted. Public comments. Now, these public comments, if you want to speak on the amendment change or ordinance changes for parking and so on, that will be done separately. Do you have any public comments otherwise? Okay. All right. Next is the public parking ordinance. Mr. Kevin Rothrock.
All right, thank you, Mayor, Council. The staff report I provided you is two separate agenda items. I'll first start with the public hearing portion dealing with the specific ordinance, and then the funding request is the next agenda item, so I'll hold off on that. Attached for your review is a draft ordinance amendment to Chapter 6, Article 4, parking. The proposed draft ordinance establishes the ability for the town to regulate and enforce paid parking, amends the current fines for parking violations, increases the fines for repeat parking violations, and allows the town to immobilize vehicles when the owner is a repeat violator and has not paid for violations over a period of 60 days. Section 629 has been added to the ordinance as drafted for paid parking when council decides to move forward with a paid parking program. And Section 635 has been amended to allow for the increased parking fines and vehicle immobilization. Underlined text is added and the text has been removed, has been struck through. The first section in 629, paid parking, there are 5 sections there, and I'd like to read those in if you'd like to move forward with that section. A, fees may be charged for parking any vehicle in a park space owned and maintained by the town. A list of parking areas and associated parking fees shall be approved by the town council and listed in Appendix A 618. B, the payment of fees will be enforced Monday through Saturday from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. and on Sundays from 1 p.m. to 5 p.m. C, the police chief or his or her designee shall be responsible for the enforcement and collection of fees for parking. D, the town council may approve the waiver of fees for certain groups during certain times or certain spaces. These waivers shall be issued through an approved system of permitting. A list of approved permit holders shall be maintained and made available by the police chief or his or her designee. E, the town manager may suspend fees for parking during times of public meetings, public hearing, or other times when participation from the public is encouraged, or during times of inclement weather. And F, fines and remedies for violation of this section shall be set forth in Article 6 of this chapter. The other section, 35, already exists, but there are parking violations and fines for each one of those violations, and some have been added. I need to scroll down to that, I'm sorry. Don't look at the screen, you'll get busy. 26. You said 26, I didn't go to 26. So the first section is up on the screen. The existing fine is posted there. We do not have anything now other than overtime parking, and that fine is $10. The proposed ordinance adds a first offense, second and third and subsequent offense, proposed currently at $10, $15, and $20. You have violations for 2 spaces in the wrong direction. We've added a section for improper use of a designated space, a fine of $25. No parking, parked in the street, loading zone, parked on sidewalk, and other, those are already covered. Failure to pay is a $25 violation fee or a fine. Blocking the street, fire hydrant, fire lane, and handicap zone, we increased some of those. Some are staying the same, but in the handicap zone, $150. And then section F talks about vehicle immobilization devices, a boot, the other term for it. The violator is a repeat offender, and the violator has fines which are more than 60 days delinquent. And that would give the police an opportunity there, if they needed to use immobilization. That's all for the ordinance. Be glad to answer any questions, and I'll move on to the funding at the next part of the agenda.
If I may, counsel, one of the things that's driving this is we're having so many people that aren't paying their parking fines. And so this will enable the town to put some teeth to their ordinance. So those people that abuse our current parking program can be held accountable. This council's talked about this for a year or two, maybe, and I personally think it's a good idea. I have gotten parking tickets and I've paid them, but for 3 hours, I think that's it's more than fair at this given time. Pete.
Kevin, will you expand on the golf cart punishable as provided therein? Is there language in the code that talks about specifically what that is?
Yes, there's another section of the ordinance that deals with our golf cart ordinance. Are we talking about section C, section 35C? Is that the part you're referring to?
Well, you make reference when you say that some of it is not in violation of this ordinance, but a violation of state law, and is punishable as provided therein.
Okay.
I'm just asking what the therein is. And if it's in the code, that's
Right.
fine.
Is that C that you're speaking of?
Yeah, this is already in the code.
Yeah, right,
Yes.
okay.
And that one is specifically referring to, under the influence of alcohol or drugs and operating a golf cart.
Okay.
That is not a violation of the ordinance, that's a
Right.
violation of state law. But any of those, I'm not familiar with what section that refers to, how it's punished, but Chief Miller is standing. in
Chief,
the
could
wings.
you add a little bit to this?
I believe you're talking about driving while impaired in a golf cart.
Right.
Correct.
Right.
It's the same as driving while impaired in a vehicle. So if you're caught driving while impaired in a golf cart, it's the same punishment. You'd be arrested. Go through the same procedure as if you were in a vehicle.
Thank you, Aaron.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Aaron.
Chief. Council, I'd like to open the public meeting, or public hearing, okay? Now open the public hearing. I have a list of names here, and then if you would like to speak after these people have spoken, if you would just raise your hand and be more than happy to come up. If you would, come up to the podium, state your name and your address. And first one is it Ms. Silver? How are you, Ms. Silver? Good, thank you.
My name is Lila Silver. I own Story Street Grill on 1167 Main Street. I'm really here today not to advocate for or against paid parking because I don't know the logistics and I don't think that many of us do, but I am here to advocate for the workforce. I have worked in Blowing Rock most of my professional career out of a few years. So I started out as an employee who used to have to truck around trying to find parking, and I'm now an employer who tries to find parking for my staff. Whether people want to admit it or not, the workforce is not as large as we would like it, and getting people to work in Blowing Rock is often difficult. Most of our staff either comes from Lenore or comes from ASU. ASU has a huge problem with parking, and most of these kids do not have cars. And so they are working in Boone instead of commuting. And then when you have people come from Lenore, most of them don't have all-wheel drive. So then they can't come up in the wintertime. I just implore you to, as you're finding solutions to this problem, that you consider who the backs of this place relies on, and that's our workforce. If we do not have a workforce to come in and to accommodate guests and residents alike, we have nothing to offer. And when we had the public hearing the last time, I felt like the scope was narrow and the answers were broad. It's a real issue finding places for people to park. And I unfortunately don't have the logistics of creating more parking within my own space. But I do have the time to speak for my staff and other people who work in the area and say it's a real issue. Before you make a decision to make everything paid and scoot everybody to Demand Field, 75 parking spaces will not accommodate a workforce in this area. There is certain points in the day where I myself have 20 employees on the premises. If I have to figure out how to shuffle people around just to get them to work, if they have a bad day, they might not come back over a parking spot. And if you really legitimately think people won't do that, they will. They can go on Indeed, find a new job in 5 seconds. So please, as you're considering the situation, look at ways that we can make our workforce feel appreciated and valued just as much as we do for guests and residents who pay taxes here.
Thank you, Ms. Silver.
Thank you.
Emily Roberts. Hello, Ms. Roberts.
Hi, Emily Roberts, 307 Morningside Drive. So I also attended the town meeting in regards to the paid parking, and overwhelmingly it was clear everyone in the room was against it. To the point that someone asked about a show of hands, and the town manager at the time said, and I quote, "If you would like a show of hands, the majority of the people in the room are against paid parking." There was no doubt about it. And I know you guys are all there. Someone asked about a survey. There has been a survey online about, do you support paid parking? There were 234 responses. 207 said leave parking alone. That's 88% against parking. There's not many subjects that you can get a vote and 88% agree. So you talk to business owners, you talk to residents, they were all against it. In the meeting, the town manager and the chief of police said there were two main issues with parking problems: lack of parking and lack of turnover. Paid parking does not address any lack of parking. It doesn't add parking, and it actually takes away parking. And lack of turnover, yes, we have an issue with addressing and enforcing existing rules. Paid parking does not address that. So approving paid parking doesn't even address the two main issues that both our chief of police and our town manager said we had. Taxpayers have spoken. They don't support it. And in my opinion, any elected official that votes yes for paid parking is not listening to the people that voted for them. We were told that proposed parking was a result of Roger Brooks's plan. His goal in the plan was to mitigate the effects that being a popular destination has on the quality of life for local residents. It is clear that paid parking significantly decreases the quality of life. It doesn't improve it. Out of all the speakers, they went on and on about how it decreased their quality of life. I'll list a few. The post office. We all know the second that there's paid parking on Main Street, they're gonna park in the post office. We know what's happening. It's already a problem. Weddings, funerals. Are we gonna charge people to go to a funeral for our own residents? Parking on Sunset. I have a daughter entering kindergarten. I didn't realize the issues with, car rider line. Our own teachers can't park in the parking lot, so they park on Sunset. So you're gonna make our teachers pay to park to go teach our kids. After school, I understand that the parents park and they build a community by playing around the area. They're not gonna do that anymore. They're all gonna go somewhere else because they're not gonna pay to park. We have a brand new park, a library, a pool, kinder sports. Do we have to pay to do all that stuff? There's free libraries and free parks all over the county. People are gonna stop coming here. The other thing is to support the local businesses. In the off season, they need us. And to charge us to go, it's gonna be a challenge. In addition to this, we heard from the business owners. They said, and I quote, "This is gonna do more harm than good." They will get irate customers and they'll no doubt lose loyal business. And this was coming from people that have businesses in Boone, both Mellow Mushroom and the oil, or the Art of Oil, Sin of Oil, something like that. She actually up and left Boone because of it. And as mentioned, already existing challenges of hiring employees. There's no way we're gonna improve hiring employees if you have paid parking. Given the overwhelming feedback against parking, plus the fact that paid parking has no concrete plan to address lack of parking and is not actually needed to enforce existing parking, it needs to be removed from the proposal. I agree the ordinance needs teeth as far as booting, things like that. Paid parking is not doing anything but making all the residents' lives worse. In case you've forgotten the consensus of the town meeting, I created a short video of the clips of the points, and every single one of you guys have gotten an email copy of that. So I hope sincerely that you listen to it. The feedback that I've heard is, again, paid parking is needed to legally collect stacks. You know what? If you put a boot on their car, they're gonna have to pay you. So if money's an issue or they're not paying parking tickets, put a boot on their car. I've heard that, this is a year out. It's not, it's not happening right now. A year out is still a problem. It's still not creating parking. And then I've heard, could just be hearsay, that there's already talks with locals about a liaison job for company administering the paid parking. So from some people, this is a done deal, and that's disappointing. I'm gonna end with the quote of Shane Fox at the meeting. If you want to show of hands, the majority of people in this room are against paid parking. There was no room for doubt on that one. Thank you.
All right, Tom Barrett.
Good evening, Town Manager, Mayor, Council. Tom Barrett, 204 West Green Hill Drive, Blowing Rock. The statement that I'm going to read to you is the public position of the Blowing Rock Civic Association. We posted this on our website last week and sent it to all the council members. Historically, the Blowing Rock Civic Association has been in favor of a system of paid parking for downtown Blowing Rock, and we continue to support it, subject to certain conditions as I will describe below. We believe that given the amount of visitor traffic in Blowing Rock, such a system could generate sufficient income to pay for the associated capital and operating cost, and in time, generate surplus that could help us improve the parking options from downtown, such as another parking structure, parking deck, or other parking, or a shuttle service, and offset the expenses that otherwise would have to be borne by the local residents via property taxes. We're also aware that other similar communities have successfully implemented paid parking systems. Consequently, we support changes to the town's ordinance that would give the town the option of implementing such a paid system. For the same reason, we support ordinance changes that would increase fines for violations and improve enforcement capabilities. Our historic and current support is subject to two conditions. One, arrangement should be made for downtown business workers to park somewhat remotely, and two, a system should be provided that has features that permit the local residents to park downtown for free for a reasonable period of time. There are, of course, various options for these conditions that could be met. For example, in case of number one, where would the employees park? Would they be provided a shuttle? Would they be charged for their parking? In option two, would local residents be issued either special decals or given other ways to identify their vehicles so they're identified as local residents? We understand town officials are planning to take some time to consider the details of paid parking systems and also to immediately implement. Immediate implementation has not been planned for. The Blowing Rock Civic Association agrees with encourages this approach. We have concerns that with the water sewer project planning to begin soon, it's going to disrupt traffic and also help us lose, at least on a temporary basis, downtown parking. That time period, or even somewhat longer period, would be a good time for planning ways to accommodate downtown employees and local residents in a paid parking system. We would be happy to provide representation from our organization to assist in research and systems in other communities that have been dealt with similar issues, and otherwise to participate in the process in respect to paid parking on behalf of the homeowners of the Blowing Rock Civic Association, which are our primary constituents. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Barrett. Do we have anyone else that would like to speak on parking ordinances or paid parking? Yes. How are you, sir?
Hi, Mayor.
Good to see you.
Good to see you. Lee Rockamore, 300 Laurel Park Road. I'll be sort of brief, just listening to this, but having been a researcher. But paid parking does not limit parking by anyone, okay? It's not the taxpayer's responsibility to pay for business employees. It is the responsibility of their employers. This happens in every other municipality that I've ever lived in. Paid parking does nothing to improve the parking situation, but if the revenue is used for improving the parking situation, it can improve the parking. Paid parking is not unique to Blowing Rock. Much of these positions stated are hearsay or testimony. They're not validated by any data. Thank you.
Sir. Do we have anyone else that would like to speak on this particular ordinance? Okay. Do I have a motion to close the public hearing? Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, public hearing is now closed. Council, thoughts?
I'll start it.
Okay.
I have a couple questions. One, I think I want to recommend that we add language about the use of proceeds that come from the paid parking. That those proceeds would be used exclusively for regulating, enforcing paid parking, And then they would also, could be used for construction, acquisition, reconstruction, improvements to off-street parking facilities.
May I? Go ahead.
I think that we should add language about that in this section 629, if that's the appropriate place for it. The only other thing that I had right now was an exception for emergency vehicles. So that if we have police, fire, those type of vehicles, that they would not have to pay in paid parking. And if we need that language in here as well.
If I may address your first section. State of North Carolina mandates that any funding or any proceeds from Main Street, say for example, Main Street parking or Sunset Drive parking, those funds have to go back to maintaining the parking program. That's paying of personnel, that's paying for equipment, okay? Parking revenue that's received from parking garages can be utilized for additional parking garages or additional parking. That the state has mandated that.
So are you saying that the proceeds from paid parking can't be used to offset cost for new facilities?
Only at parking garages, Maple Street, wherever the park, am I correct, Chief?
It's my understanding that on-street parking on US highways, which is Main Street.
Yeah.
The proceeds from that must be used to offset the cost of enforcement and like the mayor said, and maintaining those parking spaces. The parking revenues that's generated from garages and off-street parking can really be used for any purpose. That's not state mandated. It can be used, it can go back in the general fund if that's what the town wanted to do. But yes, there are restrictions on certain parking revenues from on-street on US highways, but it's not that restrictive in off-street parking.
Okay, thank you, Chief. Well, partially correct, wasn't it?
So if I'm understanding that correct, monies received from Sunset Drive, for instance,
Could be towards
used, but not Main Street.
correct.
But you want that included in this.
Well, that's all I've got for right now.
Well, you had a good point with emergency vehicles, but I'm sure that could be added without question. Pete?
Is Aaron still here?
Aaron? Were you still here? Pete's got a question for you.
What about church parking lots?
Well, in the initial plan, we were hoping to have a system to create public-private partnerships with churches, organizations, or businesses that have large parking areas. That would be something that we would have to try to develop should council in the future decide to do a paid park system.
When you had your two committees, one of the committees were reaching out to churches, right?
Yes.
Okay.
We had representation, we invited representatives from every church in the town to participate.
And what was the response back from the churches?
The majority are in favor. I think there are churches who are maybe still having internal conversations about whether they would like to do something like that or not. And obviously that's 100% their choice.
Right.
One thing we're trying to mitigate and prevent would be several individual private parking lots from hiring individual parking companies that were all had different rates, different companies, different ways that they enforce the parking from being in Blowing Rock. And we've already seen that that's happen in 2 parking lots now. So the goal, should council move forward at some time in the future, to have paid parking, will be to try to develop those public-private partnerships. And that also benefits the town because it generates more, it provides us more parking spaces through the week to use when the churches and other places don't need.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Merriman, we need to, vote separately on David's amendment.
Yeah, well, no, you can vote, somebody can make a motion to, one of you can make a motion to accept the ordinance changes with the amended request by David for emergency vehicles and so on. The guidelines for paid parking revenue are pretty well set. I mean, at least for Main Street. Am I correct?
It's broader than that.
Is it? Okay.
It's, it's really public streets within the town. So if you're,
Any public
proceeds
streets.
from the use of parking meters on public streets must be used to defray the cost of enforcing, administering traffic and parking ordinances and regulations.
So that would be Sunset. That would be
Right,
Main Street,
Right.
Sunset, or any public street.
right,
But that would not entail parking garages.
no,
So any public street, that revenue has to go towards operating the parking fund. Okay. Well, council, if you want to make a motion on the ordinance, you can make a motion with David's request, so it is in the record. Whatever you so choose.
I'll make a motion to accept the ordinance as presented with the amendment, exception for emergency vehicles.
Any further discussion? Okay. Albert? David?
Aye.
Melissa?
Aye.
Doug?
Aye.
Pete?
Aye.
Okay. So the ordinances will change, which does mean that moving forward, Chief, since we have the, of course, the public here, when would we see this, the greater enforcement take place? What's our timeline on that, Chief?
Well, hopefully you've already seen some of that implemented. We have extended the number of days per week that we offer that. The next step for us is to develop some internal systems to track these repeat violators, which we can do on a limited scale right now. So it should be fairly quick.
Did I see on your department reports that you had 80 parking citations from last month?
Sounds accurate.
Okay, and how many of those 80 have we collected on? Sorry to put you on the spot, Chief.
So I don't remember the percentage,
Uh-huh.
but I can tell you that from July the 1st of 2022 until when I printed that report a week or so ago that Kevin and I met, we had collected about $3,500 in parking lots. So that's in what, 14 months? I don't remember what percentage that was of people who paid. I'm thinking it was somewhere probably around the 30% mark, if I remember the numbers.
Okay, so if people do pay their fines moving forward, that's definitely will help fray the cost for the additional enforcement, will it not?
Sure, it helps. Yes.
Okay. Thanks, Chief. All right. Moving right along. On the regular agenda, we have a request for funding for parking enforcement. This is the additional funding for, Kevin, is that for hiring? If you'll go into detail for us?
Yes, so to keep it on the same wavelength here, to increase parking enforcement in downtown for fall of '23 and in the spring of '24, Police Department is requesting additional $10,000 over the budgeted amount of $8,000 for this fiscal year. This amount covers additional temporary staff hours for increased weekly parking enforcement until November of '23 and beginning again around the 1st of May and through June of '24. These funds were not originally allocated in the fiscal year budget, so the general fund balance will likely be the source of this revenue for this expenditure. And there is a budget amendment that request that was attached to the report that Nicole prepared for that very purpose.
Thoughts, council?
So to be clear, this is getting us more man hours on the street,
That's right.
but not putting in any additional systems to collecting those
No,
funds.
just an internal system evaluating the methods in which we can keep track. And Aaron, we discussed that a little bit this week.
Yeah, we talked about it, and really, truly, we don't have enough time to the end of our current parking season to really implement any new software and set up new systems. So we felt like for right now, to get us through the end of this parking season, just put more boots on the street, if you will, and increase those penalties. And then that gives us the winter months and another retreat in January to talk about systems and the cost of those systems and that kind of thing.
So we might be in a position to consider that for fiscal year 25.
Absolutely. I would anticipate.
Do we not have the numbers already in place for that? Or,
Currently, we're budgeted for we're budgeted $8,000 a year for parking enforcement. That gets us 2 to 3 days a week. We try to expand that to 4, sometimes 5 days a week. So we just need the additional revenue to pay for those additional man hours out on the street enforcing parking enforcement.
so with the current ordinance change that the council has approved, we put a boot on somebody's car, are we able to track that they're a repeat offender?
Yes, we're able to track it now.
Okay.
What we can't see it in real time out on the street for every car that we cite.
Because we don't have the
If
hardware.
we have a vehicle that we recognize, perhaps a park enforcement person recognizes the vehicle and has an idea that maybe that's a repeat offender, they can call in and get that information. It's not very smooth, it's a little time consuming, so they can't do it for every single citation, but they can do it in a situation where maybe we've had a complaint that's come into our office, or it's a vehicle that they recognize as a repeat offender, they can access it.
But we're looking at hopefully getting, I think you have some prices of the handheld to where it would be a lot easier to track that information
Yes,
to implement
yes,
for next season.
yes. We just don't feel like right now, the middle of August, we would be able to get that equipment here and implement that by the
Right.
end of October. So we just felt it was best to increase the enforcement hours for now, and we'll work on getting that in place, hopefully by the spring of 2024.
Okay, council? Make a motion to,
Make a motion. I'll make that motion that, we do the budget amendment to the ordinance.
okay. Second. Further discussion? Albert? David?
Aye.
Melissa?
Aye.
Doug?
Aye.
And Pete?
Aye.
Okay. All right. Well, official reports. Let's see, August 24th, we have our State of the Town, which will be held at Brom at 5:30 p.m. I hope you all can attend. Kevin Rothrock and Charles Harden are working on their presentation skills, and I'm sure it'll be very informative. Work has begun on our water sewer. Started yesterday, I believe it was.
Notice to proceed was yesterday, but they did some actual work today.
So it started on South Main, working into town, so do expect some delays. They've got a real interesting traffic setup where it's got red and yellow. And, you know, I got behind one of them today and nobody knew really what to do, even when it turned yellow. But I guess yellow means go. I don't know. But yeah, so have patience. As we all know, this is going to be an ongoing issue for many months now till we can get our water and sewer straightened out from South Main to North Main, or Valley Boulevard to Valley Boulevard. And last but not least, I want to say I heard a lot of good comments about the 100th anniversary of the horse show. I heard it went really well. Even the weather kind of cooperated a little bit for Blowing Rock. So 100th anniversary of the horse show went really well. I understand the library is still celebrating their 100th anniversary. And so thanks to all that everybody does to make those things happen and continue moving forward. Albert, any comments?
I'd just like to introduce my brother-in-law.
Oh.
His companion, or I guess I can say Dallas' former brother-in-law, but we still like each other. Stand up, Dallas. They're from Vermont, and they are in a town called Perkinsville, which I think has been consumed by a town called Weathersfield. Is that correct? 2,800 people. Now, keep in mind, Blowing Rock was founded in 1889, this town. We think it's old. Their town was founded in 1761. The interesting thing about Vermont is the biggest city is Burlington, about 242,000, is that about right? It is totally, its power grid is totally funded by renewable energy sources. Yeah.
From Canada.
I think there are only about 60 cities in the world that can say that about themselves.
Welcome to Blowing Rock.
Welcome.
Thanks for coming. If you have any trouble with Albert while you're in town, call the chief. Dave.
I don't have any comments.
Melissa.
I'm good.
Pete.
Yeah, I do have a couple things. First off, wanted to thank Representative Pickett, who came to our Economic Development Commission meeting a couple of weeks ago. He spent about an hour there, and he was very spot on about the budget, workforce housing, childcare, and everybody on the commission really enjoyed his comments. So thank you to him for coming. Secondly, is Jennifer here tonight?
I believe she's in the,
Jennifer.
Jennifer, I was reading the staff report, and there was a comment about Whitney Brown that made some comments about the town council meeting, and then she said that she had not received any responses. And then it went on to say that you said that there was going to be follow-up. Was that all taken care of?
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Yes.
good. Finally, I live right across the street from the hotel on Ransom Street. And so I drive Ransom Street 2 or 3 times a day, both up and back. first of all, there's speeding. And then a couple of weeks ago, there were some visitors coming out of the Holiday Inn, and a car came down from the top, and these people almost got hit. So I went and talked to Kevin and to the chief, and we had a nice discussion about it, and I was suggesting that we possibly look at putting a temporary test speed bump somewhere where it used to be. Kevin suggested that I talk to a couple other council people to get their concurrence. I talked with Albert and I talked with David, and they said, you know, they would support that. So I'm putting it back, I guess, on you, Kevin, to see what we can do. Something's got to be done.
I talked to the chief about it, and what we'd really like to have is some type of policy that if there's a request or a recommendation that a speed hump or some other traffic calming device be implemented, or even on a temporary basis, that we have some process that says we will do this first, and whatever those items are, whether it be evaluation of current speeds or the sight distance, or being that vegetation is in the road, or whatever it might be, before we do that, so that we just don't start putting them all over town. We have an evaluation process and a policy going forward, and Chief and I would like to dig into that and propose something as a policy that we do as a town.
Okay, well, I hope we don't wait too long, because speeding is particularly on Ransom, coming down off that hill. And as you know, there's maybe going to be an application for a 90-room hotel there up at the corner, which is even going to further make the situation even more difficult. So I just
Well,
hope
and
we
that
do.
specific request you're making, we're not looking to do a policy
Yeah,
for
yeah,
that, but
I'm just
we'll try to
talking
look
about a
at-
temporary test situation like we did on Cornish and what was the other one?
Clark.
Clark, right. Okay, thank you.
Alan, if I would like to welcome a visitor this evening, Tucker Deal. Works with Alan Mosley. Thanks for coming. He's going to be attending a few meetings. And thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Yes, sir. Thank you, council. Again, I want to take the opportunity to thank you for allowing me to serve as interim. There's nothing I can do without the staff and the department heads, and we got an outstanding staff. And as I say, without them, I'm just going to bluff my way through, because they give me the answers that I need and the response on addressing issues that creep up in town. And I really thank them all the time. We've been addressing some drainage issues. As David and I talk, it seems like every Sunday afternoon when you want to go do something, it's raining cats and dogs, and as a result, we've got issues, blowouts of construction projects, and even some of those are trying to get their sites back in order. Some of the usual suspects, we're seeing blowouts and excessive storm water, and we're trying to address those, and Matt and his guys have been good about doing that. We've had McGill go out with us at a couple locations to try to find solutions to some problems we experience every summer when we have these heavy rains. A couple meetings that attended the past couple of weeks, and what we've got coming up. Met with Middle Fork Greenway, and we met with the Blue Ridge Parkway superintendent last 2 Fridays ago. Met there in Asheville and talked about moving forward with the Middle Fork and what obstacles and what challenges we have to address in making that a reality. It's been about 6 or 7 years working with the Park Service. It takes a long time, and they're not surprised by the length of time. We are, but they say this is customary, and we're trying to work through some of those issues with them so we can move forward on that section. And if you recall, the Middle Fork Greenway has been broken into 3 phases for the Blowing Rock section. an A, B, and C. A being closest to town, B, the Park Service, and then C being out near the Foley Center. So we're moving ahead with that and trying to follow their rules for to be able to make this a reality through the Park Service. Meeting tomorrow with McGill and VPC Construction for the Memorial Park bathrooms. We'll have pre-construction, and they'll be ready to start as soon as the building permit is issued on the phase one of the Memorial Park improvements, which is the bathrooms. Also tomorrow, we're going to meet with McGill on evaluating the Memorial Park phase two elements and those things that are important with the Part F grant and what needs to be included, and if we can reprioritize before we go back out to a bid process, that we can realize the things that we need to do, and if there's some things that we can cut out and try to save some funding in that. Main Street project's been discussed already. Update on Blowing Rock Academy. Sheet rock has been finished, and painting to take place in the next over the next couple of days. And the August 15th deadline is not going to happen, but we're pushing to go as quick as we can on that. We met with the FEMA on the grant funds completion. The Laurel Lane section was completed back December of 22. And so I met with the inspector yesterday, and he signed off on the work that had been done and tried to get some funding back from FEMA. The other part is for town hall renovation and some of the damage that was done from Hurricane Fred. And so we're trying to get that finished, and we can request that additional funding. Town right-of-way hedge trimming, we put a memo out on town website and Facebook to encourage people where the vegetation is growing out in the street to go ahead and trim that back. We've had some areas where town crews have cut that back as well. And we just want to keep that on the forefront of people's minds. They need to make some trimming happen at their properties. That's all I had written down. Thank you.
Thanks, Kevin. Any questions for Kevin, guys? All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to be going into closed session. There'll be no decisions made in this session. It's strictly for informational purposes for the council. If you would read the statute, please.
Statute, North Carolina General Statute 143-318.11.6.
Thank you. So, thank you very much for coming this evening, and thank you for supporting Blowing Rock. Take a